Hello, everybody. It is my absolute pleasure to have you today with us. We're in Career Coaching Corner with Orsi Urban, and I'm Angelina. I'm a founder of ACIOTA Personal Brand, where we help talented professionals to build their authentic personal brands through trust, credibility, and real ownership of their career. And Personal Brand Coaching Corner is a monthly platform where we invite real experts with real experience. And we talk about everything related to personal brand and how you can build your authentic personal brand in this ever changing world. And I'm going to jump right in. I am joined today by Orsi. Orsi is a career coach and a learning and development strategist. She has worked in many different multinational organizations. And just for a second, she lived in 7 different countries across 3 different continents. And I'm so excited to talk to her today about how do we build this personal brand when we move abroad. And it is a very big part of our personal brand. And when you look at our website, for example, our methodology as a personal brand IQ has human capital and self-presentation. So human capital is something that we're going to root ourselves in today and see how do we manage this human capital as a combination of our skills, our networks, whatever we have brought with us to this new geography, how do we manage it and how do we position ourselves in the best and the most presentable way? So, Orsi, I'd like to jump in and please tell us about your experience across the 7 different countries. How did this happen?
Well, hello everyone, and thanks Angelina for having me. So for those of you might be asking, so where did these two ladies meet? So we met in Dubai. Back then, we both lived there, and ever since the connection stayed. You see, this is why it's great to be in touch with so many great professionals who want to change, who want to make changes in the field what they do. So going back to, and thanks for the introduction. So I'm super excited to share today what we both learned, and hopefully these tips are going to be helpful for you. So how
Own
did
journey, yeah.
how did the 7 countries happen? I think it's part of personality. Like I always knew as a kid that I was just hungry. Like I went to the library, I read. I was born and raised in Hungary. So back then there was not, it was just, I was just born before the Berlin Wall fell. So there weren't much opportunities to travel, certainly not for us in the countryside. But then, borders started to open up, possibilities started to come. And I remember like taking night trains, even as a late teen, just to get to different parts of Europe, because this is what was accessible back then. And then it came about by studying. I was fortunate enough with scholarships, and also I put in the hard work. And then it later came on with volunteering, with work opportunities. So this is why it was always a combination of work, also with because of my partner. So we moved, and then again work or studying. So it's as just life happened, and I'm fortunate enough. And as you can hear from my voice, I enjoy it. I know that it takes it's not for everyone, and that's completely okay. But if you're listening to it, chances are you have an inkling to explore the wild world.
What from those 7 different countries were your favorites and which ones were the most challenging and why?
Right. So My favorite is always where I am because this is where growth happens. That's true. Um, and then if I look back, I look back Armenia. This is where I was a volunteer, and I was just like this idealist 25-year-old. I'm going to change the world attitude. And if I look back, that version of myself, oh, that's so nice. And then
I
if I
know. I had that in Mexico too. I think we share that.
right, so it's and I learned a lot, tremendously. And then I spent 7 years in Dubai, and those were, I think, the formative years of my adulthood, so from my late 20s into my mid 30s. Now I'm giving away my age. And those were formative years because honestly, I think I became a different person because otherwise I wouldn't have had that multicultural, immersive experience, both personally and professionally. So I will be always thankful for it. And then currently I am based in Italy, very close to Milan. So here again, it's a different reality. I'm discovering different learnings and how I am evolving as a person and a professional.
When we reconnected a while ago, you were actually working in Germany, right? And
Yeah.
you're
Yes. So there was, you see, I didn't go through all the countries step by step. But yeah, definitely Germany is what I learned. I appreciate structure by nature. Yes, I do travel a lot, but what I most appreciated there was the structure, and I learned even more structure, and also how people think, and that type of, how can we be high performing within the structure but still be agile. This is what I took away, and it serves me well.
fantastic. So going back to our topic for today, when we talk about rebranding ourselves abroad, what does it actually mean?
Right. So when we move abroad, I think it's a very fundamental experience because we bring our whole self. So of course, we are the same people, we are the same skill set, yet our surroundings don't know it. How would they know, right? They see a new colleague, they see a new neighbor, they see a new face in a networking event, or popping up online. So how would they know who we are? And rebranding, or in fact branding in a new cultural context, requires also, because we talk about the new cultural context, right? So it can be very different from Germany to let's say the UAE, because the embedding culture is vastly different. So I think it also requires that contextual intelligence. Like, how do I best formulate it? How do I, not overthinking it, but being mindful? And this is, rebranding essentially means, how do I embed myself and how do I set my footing in a way how I wish to be perceived?
I think it's very important to recognize that it's a step and it's a conscious step. Many people, when they move abroad, they just go with the default me. This is what I've been doing, this is what I've known, and this is how I'm just going to go about it. And I think what we're talking today about is so profound and so important to recognize that it is a step, and perhaps it takes some time to understand how do I want to be seen, and not being afraid of it. It is an opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity, although it's a challenge as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we are speaking to the unlearning part, right? And as an adult, it's hard to unlearn. Oh, this is how I always say things in my mother tongue. And then you move to a different country where you use a different language, and maybe that expression, you see that the people you have a conversation with, and they react something like, how interesting. And not, maybe they don't say anything, but you have that split second. So it can be language, it it can be the environment, it can be how you dress. There are so many layers to it. And in fact, we're talking about reputation and brand. So what precedes you in rooms where you haven't stepped your foot, but you are about to? So how would you like to be perceived there?
Yeah, I it actually reminded me on that funny meme on internet. It says the locals will never know how funny I am in my own language.
Yes, and that's true. And I think it's also the reality of it that moving abroad is not for the faint-hearted. So um, I wouldn't say it's easy, because it's never been an easy ride. Was it worth it? Hands down, absolutely yes. Again, speaking to my experience, and it's not for everyone, but for those who are called to do it, then it means that your journey or your soul, whatever you believe in, is longing for it. And if you're on this journey of moving abroad, then looking at, as you said, as an opportunity to rebrand.
Sometimes when we move somewhere, some of our skills become not as necessary as they were in some other place. And my own experience, for example, moving to Germany, I realized that how my English language wasn't the deal breaker there. And I really had to learn German very quickly and have it on a professional level. So suddenly my academic English just didn't worth much. Do you have other examples of similar skills and how one should go about it?
Right. So as we talked about, it's also the conscious step, right? So before we move to a country, normally it's not one day to another. For some might be, but
Who
but
knows?
who knows? But then thinking about, okay, great, so I'm moving to that country, or I'm staying in that country. What is the skill set that's going to make me successful in general, or in my industry or vertical specifically? What is this calling for? Let's say, I know that AI is a hype, but we know that there are countries where, AI is, oh, well, we do it, we experiment with it, and so on. And in other countries, it's full on. So also adaptability. So there are these skill sets which everyone talks about, but then in some countries they already live it more. And I can also speak to the language, because in Italy you need to speak the language to really connect with people, and to work professionally. So definitely it's there.
What are the practical ways to find out those necessary skills before you move abroad? Not like me, come to Germany and then just recognize this is what you need to do. So, what could I have done before?
Right. So these are not new under the sun. What I would do definitely is look at job descriptions. So, of course, when someone moves with a job abroad, then It's somewhat
Yeah,
easier.
it's
The path is paved. If you move without a job, then definitely looking at job descriptions and looking into what is the requirement, not the nice to have, the requirement. And if language or there are some specific skills, chances are those are the non-negotiables. So that's one thing. The second thing is we come back to old networking. Look up some people in your network who are in that country, who have lived in the country. It can be an alumni from your university years back. Anyone that you can say, hey, I'm considering it. What are your thoughts on it? So back then when I was considering, okay, now I have grown a lot in Dubai. I did all these kind of informational interviews with a connection in Australia, another connection in Sweden. I talked to someone in Italy, so I knew the lay of the land that I'm getting into. And of course, there were family decisions, so it's never black and white, but kind of like knowing what you are getting into already prepares you.
Yeah, I like this idea of informational interviews. I think they can get so much hidden information as well, and real deal about what you're signing up for and what are you
Mhm.
considering. I think
Yes.
not only even geography, even jobs wise, talking to people who are in your target job in this market, how does their day to day looks like?
Right, right. And also, of course, there are these groups, whatever your nationality, let's say Greeks in Dubai or Greeks
Mm.
in Italy, Greeks in Germany. So, of course, you know, you can pop a question and then you get an answer. That's fair enough. And that's also a good start. And also, talking to someone who is actually there is also very useful because then you get the nuances of life.
Yeah. Okay, so that's great. Let's unpack it a little further into what other aspects of branding are there. I remember, for example, us talking earlier about how we show up with our professional attire. And I know you have a very interesting tip on that. So let's unpack it layer by layer. What else should we look at apart from like languages?
Right. So it's not to sound superficial, but how you show up matters. We already know it. We we know that we work and hire people that we know, trust, and like. And if you're new in the country, the easiest way is the last point, the likability. So how can you be likable when you dress to as if to fit in? I'm not suggesting to completely out your wardrobe and getting you in. What I'm suggesting is again this contextual intelligence, just to mold into. Um, so I lived in Dubai, now in Milan, and both places are known for, um, you know, their dress sense or that type of fitting in. And truth to be told, in both places, I worked with a stylist, and I'm very happy about it um, because then someone can tell me um, that someone can tell I can tell the stylist, hey, this is my style, this is what I enjoy, these are the colors that I enjoy. How can we make it more fitting to the environment? And it's nothing crazy. I still don't have a big wardrobe. In fact, I'm a minimalist. But still, within that minimalism, I know that whatever I pull out, I'm going to feel good. I'm going to show up in my new environment as I wish to be perceived. So this is something that I truly recommend to everyone listening. And if you say, oh no, I cannot afford like a stylist, fair enough. But then emulate the styles that you wish you really like. And again, it's not about buying the big brands, the expensive brands. It's about showing up that's authentic to you and it's fitting to the new environment.
Yeah. I think it's even wearing the clothes that you already have in a way that people in this country do that. If you like the style or if you like to adapt it that way. My personal experience was when I was in KSA for a month, and of course I had to wear an abaya, but I didn't want to just to wear an abaya. I wanted to wear the styles that the ladies there wear. So I asked my colleague to take me to the place where she buys them, and she was like, "Oh, I can take you to some other place. This is better." I said, "No, no, no. I want to go where you buy them."
That's super nice.
And that was fantastic experience. And moreover, I got a few ones. They were very affordable. And then later I tried to see how do they wear them, because the way women wear abayas in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia, they're a little different. And I think it's a subtle difference that you need to just observe. And I think that has a lot to do with observation. And so I started even tucking my abaya in a certain way, and it was fantastic. I loved it, and I felt part of a team. Although I'm no way speaking Arabic, and not even from this part of the world myself, but we felt like we belonged to one team, and it just felt very nice.
Right. And it's giving a signal, right? It's giving a signal that I observe. I would like you to consider me as such. So, it's before you speak, what they see speaks for you. And then if you're new in a culture and they say, oh, how interesting. She of course, visibly, she's not from this part of the world, but she talks her abaya like this, like, when you initiate a conversation, it's going to flow easier than otherwise it would have gone. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's a super tip.
Yeah, I really like your tip with a stylist. I personally never worked with one, but I'm very much an observer. But I like your idea, and I think I'm going to really take it on, because I actually never thought about it that you can ask a professional.
And there are of course different services. What I can speak to is I do recommend it was the same logic that she looked at my wardrobe, what I have, and then we went on shopping together. So I could see the shops that are suitable for me, that I'm willing to spend at. And then I learned how to look at the clothes, because I cannot have a stylist every time I shop. But for a major upgrade, it's super nice. And again, it's the skill set. And think about it, we pay for the local knowledge. This is how I've always interpreted it.
It's two in one.
Yes,
You
two in
want
one.
right? Bargain. How about other aspects of human capital, such as education? Have
Mm.
you noticed the difference in among different countries in perceiving our education? I know for some countries diplomas are more important, for some are not. So, what are your take on that?
Right. So again, this is something to know before moving into a certain country. Knowing that you might be practicing uh, one task in your job, or you have a job where you don't need a qualification, whereas in other aspects like some countries in Europe are very big on qualifications. You need to have a certificate, you need to show, you need to be part of a group. So this is something to definitely, because then it's going to impact also the market value of what we can ask for different services for our next salary. So so it's something to definitely consider.
Mm-hmm. I just had this thought in my mind. What if somebody moves countries, but they don't really know if they want to go with their already established career path and they want to get into a new industry, which is like double trouble. So how do I go about that then?
I would say realistically.
Okay.
Because whenever, what I'm seeing and what I have also lived, when we change industries, when we change core roles, we are not going to continue at the same level. So there is a realistic expectation that, okay, I would like to do something new where I'm not established, where I don't have track record. Then expect that your salary and your position is going to be lower. But then these are the professionals who develop super quickly because you already had a tons of experience. You know what makes a good professional. So there is that gap, I would say 2 years, where you build your reputation in that new area. And then it's going to be quicker to move. But I think there is, this is kind of like a mover's tax. That's the reality. But then it's not forever, but it's short term to be considered. I think
But it's possible, right?
it's possible. It's possible, and it's worth it. So back in Dubai, I was managing a department. Great. Moved to corporate L&D in Dubai. I'm not managing a department because I didn't have a track record. I had track record in L&D and in many, my skill set was transferable, but per se, my experience wasn't, and that's okay. And I think it's a reality to also face.
Yeah, 100%. Do you see, is it more difficult today to move abroad for a professional, or what do you see in the past maybe 5 years? Has it become easier, more difficult?
Mhm. I think it really depends on geographies we choose. Of course, it depends on our backgrounds as well. So anyone in IT or so it's, and I think the most determinant is the personality and the drive. It might take time. So I think moving abroad and this whole, so we talk rebranding, but the preceding step, the moving abroad, it might take time. It might take some informational interviews, some information gathering, some because these are big decisions, right? They are worth taking, absolutely, and they are worth taking with care, with thinking through. So I wouldn't say it's harder or it's easier. It's a definitely more connected world. So we can find that information super quickly. That's the easier part. The human part will always be there.
Would you trust AI when you research about a new country?
Well, we should never trust AI 100%, right? Because it works on probability. But I think it's a nice way, or it's one way to get started. So with thoughtful prompting, you can say, "You are my moving abroad coach with 30 years of international experience." If you start your prompt like this, then you are going to get advice from someone who is very seasoned, 30 years of expat experience in all continents. You can even add. Then chances are you are going to get good input. So AI can be a sparring partner, definitely not a decision maker, but a very good start for brainstorming.
Fantastic tip with prompting. Yeah, 100%. So if somebody considers moving abroad, what would be your 3 first steps that they need to do, like some practical advice?
Mhm. Practical advice number 1, know why you are moving. Practical advice number 2, the person you are taking with yourself is yourself. Of course, your kids, your spouse, and so on. But knowing that it's not, life is not going to be better or easier because you move to a different country. It's going to be different in a different way. So why you are moving is important, and then knowing that you take you as you. And third one, be flexible and learn. And believe me, that part is going to open doors.
Yes, I'm 100% with you. You need to stay open-minded to whatever experience that you're getting yourself into, even if it's just your thoughts. I have, I guess, this yes or no question, which I've been asked a lot, and I'm still in between on that. People sometimes ask me if I'm considering, like I am definitely considering moving to this new country, should I change my LinkedIn geography already now, or should I not? How do I go about my LinkedIn? What would be your advice?
With a yes or no. Depends. I take the easy right, because I know that in some corporate cultures, they don't really appreciate seeing your future steps. This is just the way it is. If you don't have that, yeah, go ahead. Why not? If your mind is already there, why can't your LinkedIn profile already be there? So go ahead.
Yeah, people told me it perhaps would be easier to connect with locals when they see that your geography is also there, and maybe LinkedIn algorithm will also start showing you some local things if you change it already to a country you're moving into. So I also feel if you don't have any restrictions of
Yeah.
any sort with the current employer, then perhaps it's worth exploring.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend, she was looking for a job in Europe while being located in Turkey, and she was looking for remote jobs. But she really wanted to get a European contract, which she already had, but she wanted to move the job. So when she changed her geography on LinkedIn, she was getting more interviews, but then it becomes the point that you have to say that I'm actually not in Europe. And
yeah, when you say, "Can you pop by for an interview tomorrow?"
yeah, maybe not, maybe not tomorrow.
Right. I mean, it just needs to be considered.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Where would we look for some cultural advice beyond Googling? And we already talked about network. So where do we get those real cultural advice?
Right. So this is also one point. I was just looking at my notes to bring up. Whenever I moved, there were networks, and there are international networks that I can highly recommend. So one was the Professional Women Network, PWN. They have chapters in so many places. There was also Elevate in so many places. I can speak for ladies, but I'm sure there are different organizations for different interest groups as well. So these have been hands down. There was also Lean In, there are chapters all around the globe. And when you have a global network, then it's just easier to get a referral. I asked some ladies in Dubai, do you know anyone from Lean In Milan? Yes, and that was one of the first coffees I had in Milan. So it was super nice to move between these networks, and currently, and also discovering the local networks. There is a wonderful place, Milan Women Network. So it's for expat women in Milan, and this is kind of these are the grounding places for networking. And I do recommend when someone moves abroad, or it can be, of course, it can be painting class, it can be a book club, anything that gives some grounding and a view into the local culture, or it can be even the gym. The local
I
gyms
was just
are
about
always
to say,
a
yes.
great area because there is a topic that connects you with the others in the gym, right? But you can talk to your experience. I'm curious.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually my go-to. I always look for a yoga studio and a gym. And that's how I've been connecting. I mean, not so much in a gym, but in a yoga studio, this is where I've got my first friends in a new place.
Right, right. Because you're interested in the same thing and then you can just hit it off. So networking doesn't have to be this engineered elevator pitch, I have to dress nicely thing. Networking or starting to feeling grounded, set your feet on the ground. It can go through your activities, and that's even better because then you can naturally connect. And then I know it's an old school way, but I remember I moved to Dubai in 2014, and back then was an influential book. It was called Why Don't They Know It's Friday? This book was written to expats like me who was moving in Dubai because we didn't know what Friday meant, right? And then I read this book, and I'm not saying thanks to this book I did understand everything, but it gave me a baseline. So having some, I think, this humbleness into entering a new world and really understanding some of the basics. Maybe those habits are not there today, but it shapes the whole environment. So again, it speaks to this human capital angle as we started off.
Yeah, true, true. Um, I think even knowing history of the place would also help to understand that cultural aspect and why things the way they are. I've been in Dubai, for example, for longer than my husband, and he sometimes hear me say, "10 years ago, it used to be like this," and I think my limited cultural knowledge helps him, who hasn't been here for 10 years, uh, to understand the place more. Because again, the Fridays,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
it's already not there. Urs, it's been fantastic. Uh, So I would like to make a note that whoever listens till the end and who is with us has a 50% off on the ACIOTA Personal Brand Assessment. I am plugging in the code for 50% off, and you can avail it on ACIOTA website. Um, And I would like to ask Orsi, how can people get in touch with you?
Through LinkedIn. That's the easiest. Looking forward to connecting. You can find me under my name, Orsi Urban, and I'm curious to hear about your stories or your ambitions. And yeah, reach out. Let me know if you have any questions. Happy to support if I can. If not, happy to direct you into some resources or into perhaps a direction that I would consider.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody who has been with us today and who will be viewing it later.
Thanks so much.